So that moment, of course, triggered real debate within the Democratic Party about whether he should continue his candidacy. Nancy Pelosi appeared on our show on July 10th that year, 2024, a couple weeks after the debate. When I asked her if Joe Biden still had her support, she was very coy in her response, saying this.
It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short.
At that moment, I reminded her that he had already announced his intention to stay in the race, but she simply repeated her answer, which many Democrats took as a signal that she wanted him.
I saw the show.
That she wanted him to step out. Have you and the president spoken to the former speaker since then?
Oh, my gosh. Well, yes. And Joe was just at a dinner in Washington with her, a private dinner. And also, we saw her, well, I didn't see her, but Joe did at Tatiana Schlossberg's funeral, Caroline Kennedy's daughter. And, we were in the pew. This is so typical Joe. And I don't know whether you're Catholic or not, but sign of peace. Yeah. And so Joe was at the edge of the pew, and he got up and he went to the back of, I saw him go to the back of the church. I just knew. I mean, you can't be married to somebody for almost 50 years and not know where the heck he was going. And I just knew. He went back to see Nancy. And I found out later, he said, they said, peace, let's be friends. And we got in the car and I said, where did you go? And he told me the story. And I knew she was in the church because I saw the guest list, of course, but I didn't see her personally.
Did you and the president resent, though, the pressure that Nancy Pelosi and President Obama and others put on President Biden to get out?
It was hard. It's we had the support of the Democratic Party for so long. And, I mean, Joe's been in public service as long as I've known him. And it was hard to go through that.
There were a lot of Democrats even who watched that debate performance and thought in some ways they'd been duped, that close advisors to President Biden, perhaps some members of the media even had protected him enough and kept him out of maybe a rigorous event schedule enough that they could get him along through to Election Day. And they thought, oh, we just saw what he's really like behind the scenes. Is there any truth to that?
Really? If we were hiding him behind the scenes, why did we ask the Trump team for the debate? I mean, we were the ones that proposed it. Like, if that were true, why did we put him out there?
So you don't think that he was protected in any way?
No, I don't think he was protected.
There's another sort of conventional wisdom has formed now in many Democratic circles that President Biden beats Donald Trump in 2020, a moment for history, according to Democrats, for sure, to stop the Trump administration. They overperform in the midterms in 2022, and perhaps that would have been a good moment for President Biden to say, I've done the job. I'm going to be a one-term president at this stage in my life. Were there ever any conversations to that effect?
Well, of course. I mean, Joe had to decide whether to run again. But like you said, we did well. The Democrats did well in the midterms. And in 2023, the Democratic Party was totally behind Joe. And people everywhere I went, Joe's got to do it again. He's got to run. He's got to run. And he was like, well, I don't know. Am I too old? I mean, it was the age question no matter where we went. And so, of course, we heard that what people were saying. But then people were doing polling, who could beat Trump. And the only person who polled that said they could beat Trump was Joe Biden. And so that's why Joe decided to continue on.
Or does the president now regret dropping out of the race?
I would never want anyone I loved to go through that again. It was so painful. Not just for us, not just for me and for Joe, but we have children and grandchildren. And to see them have to go through that was really a hard thing, a hard time for our family. And I would never want to put our family through that again.
But does he believe to this day that he would have defeated Donald Trump in that election?
I believe he would have beat Donald Trump in that election.
So, Dr. Biden, when your husband was elected president, he was the oldest man to do so. But then,
He was.
But then Donald Trump.
I was the oldest first lady. My birthday's tomorrow. I hate to admit
Really
it.
happy early birthday.
Well, thank you.
But then Donald Trump became the oldest man elected president when he, in 2024.
Yeah, so-
he turns 80 in 2 weeks' time. Your husband, as we've been discussing, received a lot of scrutiny for his age. There were questions about whether he was up for the job. Those questions are starting to mount with President Trump. What do you see? Do you think he deserves that same sort of
I
scrutiny?
never watched Trump. I'm sorry.
Well, do you think he deserves the same sort of scrutiny that your husband did?
I'm not going to comment anything about Donald Trump.
Let's talk about as the last hours even of your president's time in office, he issued a series of pardons that were very controversial at the time. Do you still stand by those pardons?
Absolutely.
And do you feel like they've given a template for perhaps this president to do the same?
Oh, I'm not going to speculate about what this current president is going to do. Look, Joe said all along, I am not going to pardon my son. Yeah. He stood by that. And then this current president was elected. And he vowed retribution against our son. So I don't think the process was fair to our son, Hunter. And then when Trump got into office, he said what he was going to do. I want to put that Hunter Biden in jail. We couldn't let that happen, especially on the charge that he was accused of. So I stand by the pardon. Yeah. When Joe came to me and said, I'm going to pardon Hunter, of course I was for that. I'm Hunter's mother. Of course.
Vice President Harris put out a book last year in which she said the race should not have been left to an individual's ego and individual's ambition, talking about your husband. What's your reaction to that? And have the president and his vice president spoken about any of this?
Oh, my gosh. She just called 2 days ago. I heard Joe on the phone like, hi, Kamala. That he was watching TV in the other room. And
Were you surprised she wrote that?
Well, I guess I was a little surprised that she wrote that. I thought we were a great, Joe and Kamala, me, Doug, I thought we were a great team. We chose Kamala, or Joe chose Kamala to be VP, and so we were supportive of her. And look, when Joe got out, he handed over the reins to Kamala. He had full confidence in her. I went out on the road a lot for Kamala, and honestly, I truly believed she was going to win. I mean, when I got up the next morning after election night and I went in, I was feeding Willow and my phone rang. Did you see the news? And I'm like, what news? And they said, Kamala lost. I ran into the bedroom and I woke up Joe and I said, Joe, why didn't you wake me up? I mean, I was shocked. I think a lot of Americans were shocked. And so.
How do you account for the loss? Because I think a lot of Democrats felt the way you did. Why did Donald Trump win again?
I don't know. You have to ask other Americans that because I truly don't know.
In our remaining moment with you, you do write quite a bit about hope in this book. You talk about the nurses that you've watched.
Oh, and the teachers.
And these times can feel very heavy. They can feel dark for a lot of people. I always tell my kids there's a lot more light than dark in the world. I promise that's true.
Oh, I love that.
And why do you feel that way? Because I think people feel like, boy, how do we get out of this moment we'll get out of it
because we're Americans. We're resilient. We've been through tough stuff before. Maybe not some of this craziness, now, but we're tough. We're tough. And we are optimistic and we are hopeful. And when people come up to me, which they do all the time, and tell me I lost my job, this happened to me, I lost my health care, whatever. And I say to them, don't lose hope. Find whatever don't just complain, do something about it. Register people to vote, go out and serve food at a food bank, support a candidate that believes what you believe. Don't be complacent, act. Find your passion and act. And so that's what gives me hope. And I see young people now that are, joining the campaigns as the season is heating up again. And So I'm a teacher. I have to believe in optimism and hope, and believe in the young people of this nation, because this is left to them. They've got to make it.
The new book, titled View from the East Wing, is out now. Author, former First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, thank you very much, and please give our best to President Biden.
Oh, I will. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.